As soon as there was the first wave, right, there was the first surfer. In my last video, I talked about the Matt Hoffman's Pro BMX games, and that experience turned out to be a lot better than I was expecting. It's been really nice to take a fresh approach to something that I'm so familiar with, so today we're gonna stick with that theme. I'll be talking about Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer and Shaun Palmer's Pro Snowboarder. I have plenty of experience with the latter, but Pro Surfer is entirely unexplored territory to me. I know fuck all about surfing. I watch X Games and Nitro Circus, but that's for BMX, FMX, skateboarding, and snowboarding. I'm not a big fan of the water, so I don't really pay any attention to professional surfing. This should be a really interesting experience. Let's get started. I'll start with the game that I've never played before. Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer, developed by Treyarch in 2002, is a tech fantasy surfing game that shares almost nothing with the Pro Skater or Pro BMX series of games. Prior to this, Kelly Slater appeared as an unlockable skater in Pro Skater 3, which is a bit part for sure, but still really cool. That was actually meant to be a nod to this game, as Pro Surfer started production a short while before the release of Pro Skater 3. I'm not really sure what I'm in for, but I hope it's better than I think it'll be. First, I want to talk about the career mode. If you've ever played Pro Skater, then you already know how this works. Go from map to map completing goals to move on to the next map. The goals in this game are a drastic step away from the rest of the Pro Skater lights. In Pro Surfer, your score is the big dog. It takes the forefront of most goals, and that puts a greater emphasis on creative surfing. Each map does have alternate goals, like spraying the windsurfers or doing the tricks that are called out, but the majority of them are score, and honestly, I don't have a problem with that. I've been playing these games for so long that fun and score are the reasons that I play them. There's also contests, which are also just big score goals, but instead of achieving one flat score to finish the goal, you compete for 3 highest score averages in the best of 3 heats. It's identical to the Pro Skater series of games and the Matt Hoffman games, sort of, but having multiple different categories to be graded on makes it much different. This game uses them a few times as map filler because really, there's not much going on in the way of in-depth career. It's very repetitive. Next, the gameplay. I said earlier that Pro Surfer shared practically nothing with the Pro Skater series of games, and really that's only half true. The engine, the style, and the idea is the same. What isn't the same is what you can actually do with a surfboard. There are no rails to grind and no wheels to manual. There are no objects to chain together big combos that look ridiculous. There's just you, the wave, the board, and a very limited trick set. As simple as it sounds, this is actually an extremely exaggerated version of surfing. Before this, I didn't know shit about the waves, but now I know enough to know what I'm looking at. The first kind of trick is face tricks, which are done by double tapping trick buttons while riding the wave. You can make different tricks happen by changing what order you tap them in, or holding directions for rotations, or tapping them while you're fakie, and some of them can be helpful if you accidentally land fakie. These tricks are pretty authentic to real world surfing, but now we're gonna dig into the ridiculous shit. I guarantee that you have never in your life seen a real surfer do a kickflip to Indy 540. That's right, board flips and grabs make a half swing appearance. This is honestly the most ridiculous looking surfing, but wouldn't it be awesome to be able to do that in real life? That's the best thing about the Pro Skater lights. They may not be the most realistic games ever made, and oftentimes they break in hilarious ways, but the joy of video games comes from getting to live that fantasy for a moment. Being able to do a frontside heel flip 360 from the top of an infinitely looping mega wave is fucking gnarly. It feels actually surprisingly good to play. To start surfing, you'll have to ride the wave a little bit and then stand for a takeoff. If you take off correctly, you'll get a massive amount of immediate speed that you can instantly start turning into tricks. Like I said, the actual number of tricks in-game is severely limited, but it's substantially larger than the variety of real-world surfing tricks, so it doesn't have to be too repetitive if you don't want it to be. All of them feel really good to execute, and there's a nice level of satisfaction that comes with landing an air trick perfectly. Like real-world surfing, you can also ride the tube and break the outer wall, and they count for points, so there's real incentive to try nailing that tight wave timing. I'm not entirely sure how combos work, but I think you have to do face tricks close to the tube in a certain amount of time. It's really actually difficult to chain tricks together, but not so difficult that it makes getting scores too hard or unattainable. Similar to the Pro Skater series, Pro Surfer has the traditional special trick system. It's been adapted into the new face trick mechanics, and the way it works is similar. You build up your special meter, and then you do a special trick. But there's a catch. Landing poorly, repeating tricks, and being too slow all make your special meter decrease. So there's an incentive to learning how to be more clean and creative with the tricks. If you're going for the highest score, then you need to have the most complex surfing, and it needs to be executed well. Is it weird of me to say that I really like this? I mean, I don't like being in water, and I've never been into surfing, but as a video game, this works really well. There's no part of it that feels unnecessary or poorly designed. It's really good. Visually speaking, it looks like water, sort of. Like I said, I don't know much about the waves, but most of the ones I saw in the surfing videos I watched for this had large clouds of mist that blew up from the base of the outer wall. This game does a phenomenal job capturing the motion of the waves, but it doesn't have the benefit of our modern technology. I feel like volumetric mist would have been the best visual enhancement this game could get. If we could get this same thing today, but with volumetric mist and modern water surface physics, it would look absolutely astonishing. Aside from all of that, there isn't much to say. The main menu has this pretty neat 3D boat room that's made well and looks cool, and the character models look pretty good for the time, so there really isn't anything else to comment on for the visuals. The map design for this game really doesn't work like the map design for most other video games, just generally. Instead of a level that's designed to be traversed by the player, maps in this game are really just adjustments to the wave's size, shape, and speed, with some backdrops that change. Bigger and faster waves during storms will give you more speed and bigger air, but they make it impossible to ride inside of the tube. Smaller waves have smaller air, which makes air tricks harder to execute, but it helps to make face tricks easier, and you can ride inside and outside of the tube more easily. The variation here comes with what you're actually able to do on the wave, which is a really creative way to handle it and is true to real life. It's not like the whole map could be flat or downhill. They had to come up with something, and I think what they came up with works really well. But really, I think we've arrived at what holds this game back the most. Surfing itself is the biggest drawback to Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer. It isn't for everybody. As a game, it works really well, and it does everything it's supposed to do. But the restrictions of surfing create so many limitations for what a surfing video game can actually be. For most non-surfing people, this game would probably get dry really fast. Once you've seen one wave, you've seen them all, no matter how different they are. And the surfing itself can only make that so much more exciting. But if you're a surfer, and you really like just being on the waves, then this game might let you live some of those more ridiculous fantasies that you've had. The what ifs, like, what if I tail slide inside of the tube, or what if I do a shove at 720 to fakie? Can I land that? I don't know. I don't know a lot about surfing, but I feel like this game gets a lot of things right based on that limited knowledge. The task of making a surfing game is one that goes almost completely unexplored. It's hard to know what the right way to do it is, because it's only been done a few times. The thing I like the most about this game is totally unrelated to everything. Before starting each map, you'll get a video similar to Matt Hoffman, but with Kelly Slater narrating and talking about life and the world and where he's been and the people that surf and stuff like that. It immediately reminds me of the movie Surf's Up, which is a nostalgia trip, but also, it just feels really personal.
Antarctica is not the kind of place you can go for a short period of time. You can't just go there for a few days. It's more of a trek, you know. Just imagine the coldest possible conditions you could have, and that's really what Antarctica is. Really long-range swells, which are real clean, real big, and real strong, real powerful waves. The wind coming off the ice has been traveling over the ice for probably hundreds of miles, so it's nearly frozen wind. There's a lot of swell in Antarctica. There's storms that go around the southern hemisphere all year long, and there's really nothing in the way. You know, a big part of surfing is adventure, and that adventure doesn't just include warm water.
It's the story from Kelly Slater's perspective, and it's really nice to hear. With all of that said, I think I'll give Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer a rating of 7 out of 10. It's good. I would probably only come back to it for the retro achievements, but that doesn't mean it isn't good. It just isn't my thing, because surfing really isn't my thing. As a fan of video games, I can recognize that it does a lot of things right, and it's functional, and I mean, it's so faithful to its source material. It's a very respectable title, but it's something that you check out if it's what you're into. I can't really recommend it to everyone, but I can say confidently that I liked it more than I thought I would. Next game up, Shaun Palmer's Pro Snowboarder, developed by Deersoft in 2001, is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, but on a snowboard. This game was actually originally developed by UEP Systems, who previously had developed Cool Boarders, but UEP went defunct, and development was handed over to Deersoft. Thankfully, people who were already working on the project kept working on the project, so it wasn't a complete transition or overhaul or anything like that. Even more thankfully, this game has absolutely nothing to do with Cool Boarders. Don't get me wrong, those games are fine, but when I see the title logo, it just isn't what I think about. The career mode in Pro Snowboarder is everything we've already seen. Complete goals to move on per map. Much of it is the stuff you would expect. Get scores, knock over piles of stuff, do specific tricks over certain gaps or on certain objects, and collect things. One new kind of goal introduced here is the score time attack. The idea is simple. Get to the end of the level before a certain time with the required point score. The scores are never too large, but getting those scores and then finishing the map within the time limit can be really difficult. It takes getting to know the slopes a little bit better so that you can decide which path from A to B is the fastest. When you think about it, it's actually just the idea of cool borders condensed down into one goal. The gameplay is exactly what you would expect. It's Pro Skater, but on a snowboard. There are some differences, of course, but this is the closest to Pro Skater we've seen among the four-side games. Everything is normal. Flips, grabs, grinds, manuals, special tricks, and everything else is all there. And it all feels really good to execute. Since this is a snowboarding game, flips aren't the same as they are on a skateboard. We're talking like full-ass body flips mapped to a single button input. You need to think about your height a lot in order to pull off some of the more complicated tricks. Combo chaining in this game is flawless. It feels so damn good and so faithful to the Pro Skater series. Shaun Palmer isn't a snowboarder anymore, but god damn it, I wish he was, because we really could have used more of this. Normally I wouldn't dig too much into the player customization and stuff, but this game actually has a hard mode that you can play by creating a new border. If you pick one of the available pros, they already have some stats available. But if you create a new border, you'll start with all of your stats at minimum. No matter who you're playing as, stats work similarly to Pro Skater. Completing specific goals will award you with stat points that you can then allocate to whatever stat you want. It's not as charming as picking up stat icons during the gameplay, but it's not bad either. I like that it's efficient because the rest of the game is pretty big. Each of the maps in this game is a downhill mountain covered in rideable objects. There are a ton of branching pathways and there's a lot of freedom to explore them. When I say downhill, this isn't like the downhill maps in the Pro Skater games. Rather, the maps remind me a lot of something that you'd see in SSX, but with a Tony Hawk series flair. They feel a lot more open, and it feels like there are way more pieces that you can actually use. That's not a knock to SSX because those games are really good, they have a good amount of variety, but it's a compliment to just how much effort went into making this game. If you can't see beyond the snow everywhere, then I'm sorry you feel that way. But what I see is a lot of unique objects, laid out in ways that make every part of this game feel different. Being able to grind the ski lift wires or hopping from shipping crate to shipping crate, finding a pile of construction debris hidden off in the corner, riding through the window of a ski lift lodge, it's all really fun. The only thing this game is lacking is something to make it feel more personal. There are no cool videos that play before starting each map, and the supply of real snowboarding footage is lacking. One of my favorite things about these games is seeing footage of the real world pros doing what they do, and you really don't get a lot of that here. There's some, but not nearly as much as the other games. I can excuse that because the game itself just feels really good to play. I mentioned earlier that the development was passed from one studio to another, so it's a wonder that it works as well as it does. Most games that go through even minimal development hell don't turn out as well polished as this, so missing some of the bonus features is completely excusable. I respect that they put all of their focus into just making a good game. The biggest drawback to Pro Snowboarder was the fact that it wasn't released beyond the PS2. It at least would be more recognizable today if it had made its way to GameCube and Xbox, but more so, it would have been really awesome to have a PC port with online multiplayer. It's always a shame when the circumstances hinder what otherwise could have been a massive success. This game was slated to get a sequel, and that sequel may have been amazing, or it may have been crap, but we'll never know because Activision canned the project, blaming poor company financial performance in 2003. Maybe the new leadership will handle things better, but I seriously doubt we'll get another Pro Snowboarder. Microsoft might do Pro Skater, Pro BMX, even if there's a demand for it, some other action sport, but Pro Snowboarder is pretty much doomed to obscurity, and that's a shame. It's a lot of fun. With all that said, I'll give Shaun Palmer's Pro Snowboarder a rating of 7 out of 10. It's as classic Pro Skater gets, with some quality of life features from later games mixed into this big snowboarding spectacle, but it could have been better. For what it is, I think it does a really good job. Snowboarding games have been hit and miss over the years, so it's always nice to see one that's made really well. I just wish I had more to say about it. There really isn't a lot there. The scale of the maps doesn't really give me much to talk about. So instead I'll recommend that you just go play it. This game is the definition of abandonware, and the PS2 stopped production 13 years ago, so emulate it at your leisure. Now that I'm done with those, I can finally move on to the real Pro Skater series. I said I wanted to work my way up from the bottom, so next time we're gonna go back to where it all began. Until then, thank you, and have a nice day.